So welcome to everybody. We just are waiting for a couple more people, then we get started. And thanks for joining. I think if you, by default, you're on mute. So if you want to talk, you gotta mute yourself. But I think that people, yeah, so I see people trying to trickle in little by little. Okay. I'm going to stop my notifications. All right. Martin, can you hear us properly? Okay, so you had a little bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, I can hear you good now, Paul.
Okay, cool. All right, so while we wait for other people to trickle in, so I'm going to be like, I'm from Field Massages. One of the founder of the company, but I'm not the expert. The expert here will be Martin, and today we're going to talk about the importance of finding balance in running. So this topic that really interests me because I'm a runner, but you know, we kind of want this to, it's going to be a back and forth. It's kind of like, think of it as if you have something that you want, the question you might have, and etc. At any time, just let us know. We'll be happy to. I mean, I'm not going to answer anything because I don't know what I'm talking about, but Martin here will help us try to figure out what's going on. With that said, you want to add something, Martin?
No, I think you know more than you're giving yourself credit for, Paul.
Well, I know how to run in, you know, one direction, but that's about it. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen because I'm, you know, I was looking at kind of the background. I see Natasha is going to join. She's going to be a silent participant, but going to join anyway. So this is, you know, we do this every week, as you may or may not know. Like, we kind of try to hone in on the subject and then go in depth about it. So for this one, so I'm going to ask, you know, kind of basic question. I see Liz joining. So can you start at the beginning, Martin? Like, what does that mean? Like why would having a good balance be particularly important for running?
Well, so I think what would be kind of important is to address what exactly balance is.
Yeah.
So balance can pretty much be broken down into, like, I think it's like 4 different body functions. So, you know, you have vision and, you know, the vestibular system. So those two are quite obvious. The vision, you need to be able to see something, or else your balance gets thrown off. The other one, your vestibular system, that's called like your inner ear. You hear that a lot.
Right.
And pretty much what these are they're canals of fluid in your ear. So the movement moves back and forth, and that is it signals the eye movement while your head is in motion. So that's really important. It's called the vestibular ocular reflex.
Okay.
So if somebody, you know, has a concussion, for example, it gets their bell rung, like that's usually the part of balance that gets thrown off. So those first two, they're associated with balance, but not so much as to what we deal with.
Okay.
Like 3 and 4, like the third one is proprioception. So proprioception is
Wait,
pretty
before
much.
you go there,
Mm-hmm.
so you said, like, sorry, for the layman,
Mm-hmm.
you said the vestibular system. What is
Mm-hmm.
this? That's different from the inner ear, right?
So it's all kind of grouped into one.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's pretty much just understand that it's fluid that it stimulates little hairs and sends signals to your eye muscles, which causes a reflex to track things in motion while your head is in motion. So it's able to have your eyes focus on things that are in motion, pretty much.
Okay, so you go ahead.
So if you have something like, you know, like I said, a concussion or an inner ear infection, or as you age, this tends to be affected as well. So those are all, those are two examples that can affect balance, but like we're more focused on the next two.
Yeah, this one is more like a pathology, right? So,
Yeah,
I mean, like you get bigger problems than trying to run fast, I suppose.
exactly. So that's not even something that we could address. Like if somebody, you know, has a concussion, we can't do anything for that. So as far as proprioception goes, so the next one, proprioception, it's pretty much the way that we can sense awareness of where our body is in space. So on our muscles, on our ligaments, on our tendons, there's actual little proprioceptors. And as we suddenly change direction or shift from side to side, these proprioceptors are what keeps us in balance. So, you know, yoga, for example, is a great thing that helps proprioception. Proprioception skills and drills is a big thing with a lot of athletes. And then like things, so like things
like
that can.
you're talking about like balance exercise, like like tree pose and stuff like this. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And then finally the fourth one, which applies to us the most, is the strength and endurance of the muscular system. So pretty much from the trunk, the hips down are the muscles that you're going to want to focus on when it comes to balance.
Okay, so and this is more addressing, you know, the type of muscular imbalance that we've been talking during this series, right? Okay, that makes sense. All right, so you would say, like, I'm assuming that what you face is more, like you said, like the muscular imbalance but do you? I mean, I suppose that you also kind of address the how do you call it, proprioception? I'm good at
proprioception. Yeah.
Proprioception, right? Okay.
Yes. Cool. So I mean, we can you know, test different ways, put them through a series of tests, which shows, you know, where their imbalance may or may not, you know, be off. But usually it's just so finding where that muscle imbalance is.
So how would you go about it? What's the so for everybody at home, like how do we kind of try to, what's the series of tests that we should do to find out if we have those imbalances or not?
There's a couple of them. So like a good proprioceptive drill would be, so you just mentioned tree pose, for example, right? So if you want a demo, you want to just kind of.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Tell me what to do and I'll try it.
All right. So if you just come into a regular, you know, do you have like a yoga block or anything that you can stand on?
I don't have a yoga block. I did.
No. Anything that you can stand on, just.
Yes.
That's not the ground. Perfect.
Box of Magic the Gathering, that works.
Well, if you don't break it, yes, that's fine.
Yes.
So what you're going to do is you're going to come into a tree pose, but you're going to be standing on that box, right?
Oh,
so
crap.
Don't.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Fuck, I break it. All right. So that's not a good idea, but I will find.
All right.
I will find it. No, I got one. I got you.
Okay.
This one should work. Right. Okay.
Good.
Here.
Yep. So you don't even, that's perfect, right? So now I assume your eyes are open, right?
Yes.
So what I want you to do is still stay on one foot and then try to retrace that same path of what you did and try to stay in eyes closed. So that's going to be an example of proprioception.
Sorry, you cut for me here. You said, and I'm admitting people in. You said what? Okay. You said close my eyes and try to redo it?
Close your eyes and try to redo it. And with your eyes being closed, that's a good test for proprioception.
Oh, fuck's sakes. All right. Much harder.
It's a lot harder.
Much harder.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
To be fair, I'm a little bit tired from my training, but yeah.
That's fine. But so yeah, that's a good example. So just when it comes to balance, it's a lot of single leg movements.
So
So when you
am
think
I
about
worried
running,
now? Am I worried that I?
I wouldn't. We'll work on it. No.
All right.
So when it comes to running, so basically
Mm-hmm.
what running is just it's a continuous series of modified single leg jumps, right? So this is why a lot of coaches and trainers will focus on like unilateral movements as a big component in training. So when you say like developing a strong base, it has to come from ankle stability, ankle mobility, and foot strength, because that's one of the things that sets the parameter for proper like shock absorption from the
Mm-hmm.
kinetic chain going from the ground up. So starting at the ankle, starting at the foot, checking ankle mobility and flexibility, that's kind of where the basis is, where you have to start from.
So reinforcing the base, are you talking about like reinforcing the core, or what does that look like?
So the core is involved, absolutely. But if you want, we're starting from the ground up just for the webinar purpose. So starting with how to stabilize and how to gauge the smaller muscles of the foot. So there's like 38 different attachments into the ankle and foot. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there, and
Okay.
you want to be able, a lot of times, like based on like the shoes that we wear, a lot of times those muscles don't get activated, they don't get worked. So when it goes into running, if you're running for long periods of time, you can develop imbalance issues from just not having strong muscles in the feet.
So how do you address those? Like, what type, do you have feet exercise? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. So as far as strengthening goes, you want to be doing things unilaterally. So so instability training is a big component. So things, if you ever saw like a Bosu ball, for example.
What?
It's called a Bosu ball. So it's like a stability ball, but it's cut in half.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
right. So those are good. They have wobble boards, things that, so pretty much anything that's gonna get your foot on one leg shaking, activating. So shaking is a good sign to strengthening those smaller muscles.
Okay.
And there's other things like, like they call it a star excursion balance test, where you put tape on the floor and you just, there's different ways that if you have the room, if you have the space, you can kind of do a number of different ways to strengthen and test the.
What's this one? Say that again. The one with the tape on the floor. How does that work?
It's called the star excursion balance test. So for people who are, this is usually used for people who are coming off of like an ankle injury of some sorts, and they're going through rehab. So what you normally do is you tape like a star, so like an asterisk with tape on the floor, and
Okay.
you're standing in the middle of the star on one foot, and your knee is slightly bent, and then you go ahead, starting clockwise, you go and you touch with your opposite foot the different points of the star.
Okay.
So it sounds more complicated than it is, but it's a good way to get the ankle stability moving in all different directions.
I see. So okay. All right. So that's to build the base, the balance. So you recommend to do this. I mean, and I guess what's the worst that can happen if you do have this imbalance in your running, for instance?
You can develop injuries such as stress fractures. You can get what's called runner's knee. There's a whole slew of things that can spiral if you don't have proper ankle mobility.
All right. So you do recommend to incorporate this as part of like a regular routine, or like is this something, or is this something that responds to a pathology, right?
Not necessarily. You want to make it more of a kind of preventative than a reactory type treatment. You don't want to wait till things start to hurt before you start taking action.
Fair.
So personally, I usually integrate types of instability training 2 to 3 times a week as part of other strength training modalities. And I personally think it makes a huge difference. Just with my running.
Does the doing, for instance, what you call single leg lift? You know what I'm talking about? The thing that you on one leg and you just like touch your stuff and go back up. Does that count?
So the single leg deadlift. So yeah. That's going to be. You are, if you're on one leg, you are activating the standing foot. Yeah. A better one for that would be like if you're in a seated position and like you're sitting in a chair and you just use one leg to stand up. So if you're using that, that's a good way to gauge weaker muscles than it would be to gauge a Romanian deadlift.
Yeah, fair enough. Romanian? I didn't know it was Romanian.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And so that's the base. What else do you recommend? Because we started with the feet. Like, what else should we do?
So that's the strengthening of it. And usually what I like to do is test the mobility of it as well. So a lot of people have real weak ankle mobility. You see this a lot with people who do a lot of heavy weightlifting who can't sit back in the heels. So that's a big thing as far as with the CrossFit and the Olympic lifters. Sometimes you see them with the heel inserts is because they don't have the ankle mobility or flexibility to get back onto their heels. So that's usually a good way. There's a couple things that you can do to test mobility. A lot of times that's because of tight calf muscles.
So wait. So you said you cannot do it. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So you're saying that you can't move you cannot sit on your heel. Wait, it doesn't make any sense.
So if you're doing a squat, for example, right? A weighted squat with a barbell on your shoulders, and you come down into a squat position, you want to be able to be sitting back on your heels. And for a lot of times people don't have that mobility to do so. And that's a good indication of something that's tight behind the leg. So usually it's the tight calf muscles, which, that's when the foam rolling and the stretching would come into play.
Okay. So let me demonstrate. I'm not sure I understand. So I'm going to, if I don't understand it, I'm going to assume that I'm an idiot, but maybe other people didn't understand it either. Right. So what? So going this way and then what?
Yep. So step your feet out a little further apart.
Okay.
So, yep. All right. And then come into a squat. So come down. So okay. Are your heels flush onto the ground?
Yes.
So you probably have good ankle mobility then. So
okay. So because people would be like this. I see. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And so you're saying this is related to tight calf muscles, and this is where you recommend foam rolling.
Yep.
Does that happen a lot in specifically runner, or because you mentioned deadlifter, weightlifter and CrossFit? Do you see this happening in runners specifically?
Yeah, it's a common overuse injury. People with tight calves, it's one of the major muscle groups that can get overused just from high volume running.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that this is the kind of stuff that it's a slippery slope, right? You start with this, and then probably change your stride and kind of start going towards more and more injuries, right?
It's pretty crazy when you think about it, because if you have an imbalance in your feet or ankle, you can see that shown elsewhere. I had somebody, this was a couple of years ago, where this person came in with with shoulder pain, and
Wow.
we couldn't figure out what was going on. And then finally, they told me that, they rolled their ankle like 2 months ago, and this kind of shifted everything, how they walked, how they ran. And once we got, that cleared away, the shoulder pain started to dissipate, which is pretty wild. So
yeah, no,
that's why it's so important to have a strong base.
yeah. I mean, I'm just in like selfishly, when you are running a longer race, right? Like with this, if you don't have, this is where it comes into play, because if you start having some like imbalance or weak core, mile 20 or mile 21 or marathon or something along those lines, this is where, that can make a difference between a good performance and a bad performance, for sure.
Exactly. So like we touched on last week with, if those primary muscles in the legs, so your quadriceps, your glutes, your hamstrings, if those all start to become fatigued, those secondary muscles are the ones that start firing. If those ones aren't strong enough, then that's where you're starting to get the shifts and the imbalancing and the injuries, and it's just this ongoing cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So we're keeping this conversation, but does anybody want to have a specific question on what we're saying so far? Like, we're trying to give you an overview, and we'll open it up for more Q&A later. But if somebody has something to say that they want to share,
don't forget you're probably on mute, so don't forget.
Yes. If you want to talk, you need to unmute. Cool. So everything is super clear. Excellent. Let's continue then. So other than this, like what else do you recommend? I see that, like, when we looking at the articles that we shared, you also mentioned some stretching and self-massage technique. This is what I suppose this is more to address those imbalances, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
can you give us a rundown on this?
Yeah. So the lower anterior leg, 3 stretches. These are something that you can do, at home. There's different variations that you can do. If you have a foam roller or a stick, they're usually really good. So with these stretches here, what Olivia is demoing here are all stretches for the tibialis anterior. So this muscle is pretty much the muscle on the front of your shin. Okay. So right to the right side of your shin. This is a muscle that can, if it's considered one of the shin splint muscles. So if you're a runner, sometimes this guy gets overused. And then also if you have chronic calf pain, on the other hand, this is a muscle that is usually weaker.
I see.
So this is a muscle that sometimes gets overlooked as well.
So, and that would be, so it would be then related to what we were talking about before, where if you have like tight calf muscles, or I suppose this shin muscle, then this could create some lack of mobility. And okay, but how is this related to the balance piece?
It's just, when you think about it, it's just as a whole, the muscles of the lower leg have to, so your tibialis anterior, it connects down past the ankle into the foot. So it turns into a tendon down there, but the heart of the muscle is up in the shin. So if the muscle is affected, the attachment's affected. So that's why you have to have that muscle in particular, strong and healthy or stretched out to help with the ankle mobility, the ankle stabilization.
So how does that, so I see, so the tibialis anterior, so the shin stretch, how does you do the seated stretch? How does that work?
So let's see, let's pull it up here. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. So if you don't have like a hardwood floor somewhere that's, slippery, it's hard to do that. There's a good alternative to that stretch if you don't have a floor where you can do it.
Yeah.
If you're kneeling down, so if you want to demo
Yeah.
again, Paul. Sorry.
Yes. Yes. All right.
So come into a kneeling position.
This.
Yep. And so you might only be able to do this one leg at a time because it's a pretty intense stretch. So are your shoes off? Are your shoes off?
They are.
Okay. So what you're gonna do is sit back on your heels.
Okay.
Right. And then all you're gonna do is lift one knee up at a time. So make sure the back of the foot is flat on the floor. You're gonna lift that knee up, and you'll start to feel a stretch in the front of the shin.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a different alternative to what Olivia's doing on that seated version of it.
Gotcha.
And if you want, you can do both legs at a time. But like I said, it's a pretty intense one. So.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. Yeah, definitely feel it. I don't know. My ankles, like I always, I don't like. I don't know. Every time I'm sitting down on my ankle like this, like the front of my ankles, is hurting. Like probably because I don't stretch enough.
I can't tell you.
I'm on my own on this one. Okay. Okay. And then so stretch. I guess you want to also stretch the other side, right?
Yep.
So that this one is basically the classic, like the thing that I suppose everybody loves to do. It's just like putting your feet here, right, and stretching like this.
Yeah. So trying to see. It's like a regular.
Or the back
calf
of the
stretch.
back of the calf, right? So you putting your foot on the wall and kind of moving forward, right?
Yep. You can do it on a wall. You can do it on a step. When you're doing it, you want to focus on pulling your toes upward. So you're activating that tibialis anterior muscle to get a deeper stretch into the calf.
Gotcha. Yeah. So and then this one are then self massage and using a foam roller and things like that.
Yeah, you can use a foam roller, a stick, a tennis ball. Just be careful you're not rolling over your shin because it's not comfortable.
Yes, it's suboptimal. I agree. So you're saying, like, from what I'm seeing in this, so you're focusing really on, so far what we've been saying is, so test your mobility by doing either like the tree pose on a box or some other, like using some sort of stability ball or whatever. And so that I suppose that both tests and kind of strengthen. And then you're saying that you want to concentrate on making sure that your calves are not tight, because that causes the most instability. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can take it even a step further. So when you're doing these mobility tests, so if like I said before, there's real tiny musculature in the feet. If you're having some crazy instability issues, like where, say, your ankle is pronating so far inward, most likely it's not going to be one of the smaller muscles in your feet. You're going to have to look elsewhere. It's one of the larger muscle groups, like the glutes, the hips. You have to check those first. So if you're seeing monumental shifts in balance, then the feet may be involved. They probably to a certain degree, but chances are the bigger issue is around the waist and the hip region.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to this, but Ryan just asked, so assuming that everything feels generally normal, which one of those techniques do you recommend to do, and at which frequency, right? So, because you mentioned that you were doing some of those on a regular basis, what would you recommend for non-pathological path?
So I'm a huge fan of the Bosu ball, single-legged movements. So when it comes to running, I just find any kind of unstable surface, whether it's a Bosu ball, a slant board, and get on there with one leg and a slight bend in the knee, like you would be if you're running. So even if you want to hold the running form, and just let that standing leg work. Let it stand there, and you're going to feel it'll start to shake. You're going to feel it, and that's a really good ankle stabilization drill. I feel like that one is I get the most out of it, at least.
How often?
I mean, I usually do about 2 to 3 times a week. If I were, like, working out at a gym or something like that, I would have a Bosu ball next to me and just do like split sets where, like, if you're doing, calf raises for one set, and then you go ahead onto the the Bosu ball and do some stability work there. It's kind of interchange with the rest of your workout routine.
So like integrated as part of like a set, right? Set of strength. And what about the stretches? So I guess one of the questions that I have also, sorry, before you start, do you recommend, because what I've been doing, okay, so I've been mostly running, and I'm not very good at doing any other stuff because I'm an idiot. But when I do try to stretch or do strength training, I tend to do this in a completely separate session, not after or before I run. Is that something that is ideal? Is that something you recommend, or would you recommend, for instance, like, let's do the stretches after you run?
So everybody has their own way of doing it. I like to say, like, if I'm lifting, if I'm doing any kind of strength training, I don't run after that, just because your legs become so taxed, and that can throw off your form a little bit. But as far as the stretching goes, the stretching should be done, like what we discussed this while, the difference between static and dynamic stretching. If you're going to be doing stretches where you're holding them for long periods of time, it's usually best for post-workout, post-run.
Okay. Ryan, does that answer your question? You're on mute, so yes, cool, excellent, great. All right, so where were we? Oh yeah, and one last question you mentioned. So there's the what do you call? How do you call this ball again? Like the half cut ball?
Bosu, B-O-S-U.
Bosu ball. Okay, and you mentioned another thing.
So a wobble board. You ever see what a wobble board looks
wobble
like?
board. Okay. But you can be on one foot on the wobble board, no? Isn't it like? Isn't that the thing with 2 feet that I actually don't know what a wobble board? How do you write this? How do you spell it?
W-O-B-B-L-E.
BBLE board.
So
is this what it is?
Yeah, so you can do it either with,
yeah, because I was thinking of this thing. Oh, so this is the wobble board. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, this kid is having a blast. No, I thought it was something like this. I was having a hard time understanding how you stay on 1 feet. Okay, got it now. All right. So yeah, so going back to, like, if you have something that is a little bit, so how do you know whether the your because of instability would be more at a higher level or at the bottom? I mean, at the lower legs. Like, is there a way to figure this out?
So I don't know. Like, what do you?
Doug, I'm piggybacking up on the stuff that you were saying earlier, when we're talking about, like, focusing on the lower part of the leg, like the feet and the calves and etc. And you mentioned that in some cases the problem might be in a larger muscles, like the glutes and etc. And I was wondering, is there a way to identify this if the problem is not on the lower leg, or is it kind of?
So with muscle imbalances, it's kind of hard to say what causes what. So normally what I would do is start with the larger muscle groups and work the way down. So for example, if you come into like a regular squat and you have knee valgus where your knees cave in, you address that first before you go ahead and even look at strengthening the ankle mobility. So you want to address the larger groups first before, if you have to choose between the two.
Yeah, and for those who want to, like, we did talk about this. What do you call it? Shit, I need to understand the lingo. The wobble knee. How do you call it? Sorry.
When the knees cave in like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about that last week with the knee valgus.
Knee valgus. That's the term I'm looking for. Yeah. So for those who wants to learn more about this, we did talk about it last week. But essentially, this is. We had a series of flexibility and movement and mobility. So just encourage you to reread this. But okay, so this is so now I'm starting to put it in the picture, right? So once you've addressed like the bigger body imbalance, you're focusing on more like the finer grained stuff for running specifically. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. And so so from your experience and the people that you're working with, do you find, is this common? Like how common is it that there is, I mean, I feel like I tried to stand on the box and the triple while closing my eyes and already almost fell. So I feel like this is fairly common and I wasn't even aware of it. So is this type of small imbalance, are you finding it often or is this kind of rare?
Normally everybody has some type of favoring side, whether you're right hand dominant, right side dominant, left leg dominant, right leg dominant. Usually there's some degree of difference in everybody. It's just a matter of being aware of it and addressing it.
All right. Well, I guess those are the that you didn't give me a percentage. So you tell me everybody basically.
Everybody. I mean, I don't know anybody who's equally strong and stable on exactly both sides. It's kind of hard to find somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems reasonable. But at least I have some techniques for me to try out and be more aware of my weaknesses, I suppose, which is a good thing. All right, so I want to kind of open it up to if you guys have questions, things that we missed to address. If not, I'll recap. Anybody want to add questions, comments, things that they wanted to talk about? And that could be basically about anything, not necessarily this particular topic. Are we able to access last week's sessions? Yes. Fran, I'll make sure that I'll send you. Where do we store the recording? Do we have? So yeah. So there's a few things. One, we will find your email and send it to you, Fran. But there's also something that I wanted to show you that we have that is free now. This course on self-care kind of addresses a lot of this, and this is something that we do we add videos every week on this and kind of related around the topic, and this is a bunch of videos of self-care series that you can use. And do you have the recording of last week handy or
I think has it been posted? I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check.
Anyway, we'll find it. We'll send it to this audience for sure. Anyone else? Any questions? No.
So we have a special guest listening today. I don't know if she. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey, Paul. No, is Raha here? Is she able to
I'm here.
speak? Hey, Raha, what's up? So she's a member of Philadelphia AMP. So they're an ultimate team based here in Philly. So we thought it would be a good idea to kind of pick her brain a little bit. She can chime in on the issue. So do you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, the team, and for anyone who doesn't really know what Ultimate is, just kind of give a brief rundown of it?
Sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for setting this up. I really appreciate it. I know this is a difficult time for everyone, but it's nice to be able to do things like this. So I'm Raha, and I have been playing Ultimate since I was in high school. Ultimate is just a combination of, it's a field sport, a little bit of a hybrid between soccer, football, basketball, I'd like to call it, where it's a team sport, so it's 7-on-7 on the field. You advance the frisbee until you reach the other end zone and you score. You can't run with it, you pass it, you have to set a pivot, you have 10 seconds to advance the disc. Just a little about it. The best part about it, I think, is the community and the fact that the sport is actually self-refereed. So you get to be honorable and call your own fouls and actually have a conversation about whether it was a foul or not. So that's kind of unique about it. Another unique aspect is the fact that you can actually play co-ed. So I actually play for Philadelphia AMP, which is a co-ed team. It started in 2006, and that's when my partner and I both started playing. So yeah, AMP's been around for some time, and we've qualified for nationals every year since then.
Congrats.
Thank you. And the last 2 years, actually last 3 years, we qualified for the national final, and we won 2 championships, and one in 18 and one last year in 2019. So that was super exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's basically what Ultimate is.
So obviously there's a great deal of running in Ultimate, not in the same way as, say, like you'd be running a marathon. So it's more, short sprints, changing directions quickly, jumping, constantly being off balance. So just curious, like, as to what kind of training that you guys integrate to make sure you're continuing to keep a strong base.
Right, absolutely. It is a little bit of everything. So like you said, you need to be agile because there's a lot of change in direction. You also need to be extremely fast so you can beat your person to the disc. And you also need to have conditioning because there are times like we had last year and one of the points was like 20 minutes long. So you can't just take a sub and get off the field until that point's over. So you're constantly cutting back and forth, back and forth. And you also, you need to be explosive too, to generate a defensive plays, so you can lay out through and catch the frisbee and get a D, or you can jump up really high in the air and catch the frisbee over someone else. So things like that for sure. So some of the things that we do are a series of, for conditioning, we'll do a lot of tempo running. So the distance will vary. If it's during the off season right now, we do a lot like longer tempo running, and a tempo run is like basically works on sprinting mechanics, but you're never really taxing your muscles as much as you would in like 100% speed. So you run about 60 to 70% of your speed.
For how long?
So usually I'll do like 5 sets of 5, let's say 150 yards to, right now we're at like 170 yards. And
Gotcha.
if you have a heart rate monitor, you check to make sure it doesn't go beyond, like, it doesn't go into the red zone. So like, obviously everybody's heart rate ranges are different, but for me, like, I try not to go above 155, and then I have to wait till I recover to like 140 to go to the next rep. Another kind of conditioning are shuttles, so you can work on that change in direction. And again, the extent of that varies. So right now is when we do a lot of them. It's like the worst time. So we'll do like 4-minute or 5-minute or 6-minute shuttles, which suck. So
what is a shuttle? What is a shuttle?
There's a
What does it
shuttle.
look like?
So shuttle is basically like you set 2 cones apart at various different distances. So like, for example, we'll just say 30 yards, okay? And then you run back and forth. You go to the cone and back, to the cone and back. You just run back and forth, changing direction constantly. So we'll do different formats of that. So we'll do like back and forth for time at a certain amount of distance, or we'll do like what we call 150 shuttles, so at 30 yards. So you're going back and forth 5 times, and then you rest, and then you repeat and do. So that kind of hits the conditioning side of it. as far as agility, there'll be like a field workout day where we do some, like Martin was saying, working on some balance, some single-legged jumps, some lateral work where you're jumping side to side, lunging side to side. Also working on 100% sprinting. So you can, again, you want to build speed, you gotta sprint. So that'll be like shorter, you know, like 15 yards. You go all out with good mechanics as much as you can. You walk out, recover, you know, recover fully however long that takes, and then you go into your next. And they'll have like different types of sprinting starts. So you might start forward like you normally do. You might start on the side, so you're crossing your leg over to go into a sprint. So again, those are just like very sport specific field kind of sprinting work. As far as the gym, a little bit of everything. The workout program I follow kind of focuses on like functional movements. So full body, generally 2 lifts a week in the off season and then 1 lift during the season. And like Martin was saying, a little bit of balance work, single leg hops, but a lot of just like cable work where you're using your core, you know, functional movements, working on your shoulders, everything at once. And there's like videos attached with it too, which makes it more productive. So you're doing it properly.
Right. So. And do you integrate, so that sounds intense, first of all. And it sounds like, you know, my sport is kind of your punishment. So, I like it. Do you, and do you incorporate like what's your recovery as part of your training as well? I'm assuming yes. But.
Great question. The workout program I follow is very adamant about trying to alternate like high intensity days with low intensity days. So high intensity day would be the strength lifting training and also like the field workouts where you're just going all out, you know, hitting that, going above that red zone with your heart rate where you're tapping into like the anaerobic system, building up lactic acid, things like that.
Right.
So you want to make sure after those types of workouts, you take a recovery day. And that's when you do your more like lower intensity heart rate, you know, making sure you're recovering to 140, like the tempos. Sometimes we'll do like repeat hill sprints, which is explosive, but you kind of make sure you rest again to the appropriate.
So, and so you train this, you train every day?
Almost every day. And if I take a day off, I try to like move in some way. I'm not good about it all the time, especially right now, like work out hard and then come and like sit for a while. So,
yeah.
But I need to be better about doing more yoga and stretching and foam rolling. I've used to be much better at that, but then I found Martin and then he just does it for me. So I got a little bit spoiled. But
yeah.
Now that we don't have that, I need to get back to the routine. But
yeah.
It was funny reading about today's topic. Actually, I felt like I was reading about me because I've had some injuries, particularly like plantar fasciitis and anterior shin tightness. So I totally experienced that, and I'm gonna definitely go back and read this and utilize some of the videos that Olivia made as well. So
awesome. Well, first of all, it's great to hear from you, and so thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. But yeah, I'm glad that it helped a little bit. Like selfishly, again, like, and Natasha can tell you, like I actually did a yoga session this week, which haven't happened in like forever. Because I have little time and I spend most of my time running and then just maybe doing some core and etc. And like I think like you going every week and going through series, I'm like, I should probably do something about this, don't I? so there is, I don't know if it's guilt, like you good old fashioned guilt that makes me do this, but I think realistically is more understanding, like having a good understanding of how it functions and why it's could be problematic in the long term kind of motivates me more than just people telling you, hey, you should do this on a regular basis, right?
Absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so sorry, I put in the chat, but yeah. So the recording of the previous sessions are directly on our website, so you can just go ahead and see them there. And you know, we're doing this every week, so we're happy to just share the information. So anyone want to add something? Any questions that you might have? Okay, you know, I know it's everybody's shy. It's late, I guess. Well, thanks, Martin. Thanks, Raha. Can we watch you play, like when the season is started?
I mean,
What do you guys play?
you can watch some of our old games. There's a lot of good games you can watch on YouTube, actually, if you
Oh yeah.
want me to put in a link here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
And we'll put it on the notes as well. But yeah, I think that's I'm kind of curious now. Plus, there's no sports to watch anymore, so you know.
That is very sad. Yeah, this will be good.
My name is Jamie Amos. I'm the host of the course.
Ah, there it is.
This is a good game. 2017, the first time we qualified for the finals. It was the best game we've ever played in. It well, I won't tell you the ending, but
don't ruin
probably
it.
guess. Yeah, it's super fun to watch. And I'll also send you our highlights that one of my teammates made. But if you just Google Philadelphia AMP.
So if I Google, is it Philadelphia? What? Spell this for me. AMP. Okay, you just did.
You'll find tons of stuff there.
Sorry, Philadelphia AMP. Ah, sweet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Cool.
And then even if you look in the video section on YouTube, you'll probably find some stuff. You can follow us on Facebook. There's some good highlight videos, like I said. So yeah, these are people that are around in Philly and are making badass plays on these games. So it's pretty cool.
Where do you play if you play, like, you know, if we were regularly playing?
Right. So we practice normally. We would have already started our sort of tryout season in April, and we would practice at like suburbs area high schools, but the tournaments vary. We only really host maybe one tournament that's a round robin. I think Olivia and one of the other members came to one tournament and did like a session there. But other than that, we travel a lot of traveling. So there's like a Triple Crown tour of tournaments. There's the US Open, Pro Championships, and then the National Championships and some other various, there's regional championships as well to qualify. So mostly traveling.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to resume that soon enough.
I hope so, but plenty to watch now that there's nothing else going on. So enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again for your time. So for everybody, thanks for joining. I want to remind you of a few things. So like I said, we have our self-care video series. I encourage you to also check out the courses that we have online. And we also recently published some, I don't know if you saw, but some at-home workshops as well. If you go to here on how to foam roll, how to massage your partner, how to stealth stretch, and etc. So if you are interested, again, you can find them there. We're trying to do our best to give something back while we can't really be with you. So check out our courses page. We have all of our information on Facebook, on our website. We will send a communication tomorrow, just recapping all this, and we'll add the links on the Philadelphia AMP as well. And with that said, thanks for joining. Martin, you want to add something?
No, thanks for everybody for tuning in. And next week, I believe our topic is going to be on the shoulders. So addressing different shoulder issues, injuries, and ways to strengthen and stretch. So
good, because I've been again like not sleeping well. I don't know. I have something that fixed. So good. All right. Thanks again, folks. And,
all right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.